When people think about the fall of Rome, they usually imagine barbarians storming the gates, legions collapsing, or emperors poisoned in palaces. Yet empires do not fall only because of external attacks. Most of the time, they collapse from within. And one of the most corrosive elements of this collapse is almost always money. Rome did not fall only because of invasions or corruption. It fell because its monetary system collapsed. And the lessons that can be drawn from this collapse are still valid today for every modern economy that believes it can play games with money. First, let us set the stage. For centuries, the backbone of the Roman economy was the silver denarius. First minted around 201 BC, this coin was almost pure silver and was accepted with trust throughout the empire. Soldiers were paid with it. Merchants demanded it. Ordinary people stored their savings in it. The denarius was not just money. It was trust made tangible. The power of Rome and the value of its money were linked. As long as people trusted Rome, they trusted its currency. However, maintaining an empire was expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, and wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was under serious strain. On one side were Germanic tribes, in the east the Parthians, and inside the empire growing unrest. Tax revenues could not keep up with rising military expenses. At this point, emperors turned to an old and familiar method, reducing the value of money. Instead of collecting more taxes from the people, which always caused backlash, they reduced the silver content of the denarius. The numbers clearly tell the story. During the reign of Emperor Augustus, the denarius was about 95% silver. In the early 3rd century AD, under Caracalla, this ratio dropped to around 50%. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, it fell below 5%. A coin that had once been almost entirely silver had become nothing more than a bronze disc coated with a thin layer of silver. The people noticed. Inflation began. Because money was no longer backed by real value, prices rose rapidly. Wheat that once cost a single denarius soon required dozens. This was not an abstract economic theory. It was a destruction that directly affected the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers began demanding higher wages just to survive. Merchants refused to accept debased coins, preferring gold or barter instead. Local economies reverted to direct exchange because money was no longer trustworthy. As confidence declined, emperors minted even more low-value coins, believing quantity could replace value. This became an inescapable vicious cycle. The crisis reached its peak during what is known as the Crisis of the 3rd century. Between AD 235 and 284, Rome endured nearly 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose to power and were killed within months. Behind this political turmoil was a collapsed financial system. Taxes were collected in money that lost value every day. Farmers preferred abandoning their land to paying taxes. Trade networks disintegrated. The state introduced desperate measures such as price controls and forced labor. None of them worked. In AD 301, Emperor Diocletian issued the Edict on Maximum Prices. He fixed the prices of thousands of goods and services, from grain to wages. Those who disobeyed faced the death penalty. The result was disastrous. When money is worthless, prices cannot be fixed by law. The black market expanded, and official trade nearly came to a halt. People quickly learned that laws could not repair broken money. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius altogether. Around AD 312, Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a gold coin of consistent purity. This coin provided stability for centuries in the Eastern Roman Empire. But for the Western Roman Empire, it was already too late. The economic structure hollowed out by the currency crisis could no longer support the empire. The fall of Rome did not happen in a single moment. It was a long collapse. The breakdown of the monetary system was one of the sharpest links in that chain. So what does this mean for us today? The collapse of money, is always the collapse of empires. Rome believed it could deceive its people with coins that looked the same but held less value. Modern states believe they can do the same by inflating away debt or printing money. But the result never changes. The people pay the price. Trust disappears. Throughout history, major inflationary crises have followed the same path. Governments debased money. Elites protected themselves with real assets. Ordinary people were impoverished. Rome was one of the earliest major examples of this story. By the 20th century, the echoes were unmistakable. After World War I, Germany printed money under the burden of heavy reparations. In 1923, a loaf of bread cost billions of marks. People carried their wages in wheelbarrows. Savings were wiped out. Economic collapse paved the way for political extremism. Zimbabwe followed a similar path. In 2008, inflation reached astronomical levels. Eventually, the country was forced to abandon its own currency. Even developed countries are not immune to this cycle. In 1971, the United States severed the dollar from the gold standard. From that point on, money became based on trust rather than a tangible anchor. Over time, debt increased, the money supply expanded, and purchasing power slowly eroded. The same money remained in circulation, but its value was hollowed out. Governments present inflation as growth. They praise wage increases while downplaying the rising cost of living. They treat rising stock markets as proof of prosperity. Like Roman emperors, they attempt to hide what has fundamentally changed. Today, the risk is greater because the system is global. The next major crisis may not be limited to a single country. And history tells us this. Those who suffer the most are people who live on wages and keep their savings and money. The lessons to draw from Rome are clear. Inflation is not an accident. It is a choice. Real value is not found in paper, but in productive assets. And never assume stability is permanent. The fall of Rome reminds us of this. When money is corrupted, society begins to unravel. Contracts lose meaning, trade breaks down, and governments lose legitimacy. The barbarians at the gate may deliver the final blow, but the real destruction always begins in the treasury. History does not repeat itself exactly, but if you fail to understand it, you will still be forced to face its consequences.